I think it's fair to say that one of the most criticized classes that currently from the 2014 Player's Handbook is the Monk. I know that has not always been the case. When I joined the game, it was the Ranger, and then they printed a bunch of really good Ranger subclasses. Everyone was fine with that, and they somehow stubbornly refused to print really good Monk subclasses, Mercy accepted. The issue with Monk is that it is trying to do a lot of different things. It has several survival features that make it pretty good at saving throws, pretty good at evading or avoiding damage. It has an okay armor class. It doesn't have hit points, and it doesn't really have great ways of focusing the enemy fire on them. And getting a high AC is quite expensive, ability score-wise, thanks to unarmored defense. In fact, there have been videos out about how you should just ignore certain Monk features like unarmored defense, throw some armor on your Monk, and they play better, right? Sometimes the limitations that these features imposed were so bad that it was better to just ignore parts of the class. So it's not a great tank even though it's got tanky features, and it's also not a great damage dealer. Monk is really hindered by the fact that they are primarily using unarmed strikes. They can use Monk weapons, which are generally the less powerful weapons in the game, like quarterstaves. Although they are able to occasionally do more attacks than other classes thanks to Flurry of Blows, those Flurry of Blows have to be unarmed strikes. So the unarmed damage is what you're getting with a Monk. Unarmed damage being one of the lowest damage per hit ways to do damage. So they're not doing super great on damage either, and not a ton of ways to improve it because they're not using weapons for that extra couple of attacks on their bonus action. Not only that, but every time the Monk wants to do something cool, like use Step of the Wind or do dodge as a bonus action, or do that Flurry of Blows to keep up on the damage meters, they're expending Ki, which they have a limited resource pool of. They do refresh on a short rest, but as we have seen from other changes in the OneD&D playtest, the devs acknowledge that groups are not taking short rests as often as they expected them to, which means the Monk is getting shortchanged on its only currency system. Add to that every other Monk subclass uses key points for lots of different features, and you look at a class that is starving for just the barest of abilities that other classes get for free. So I think that the community was expecting, especially since the Monk was the last class released in the playtest, was that we'd see a new Monk. And yet, we really haven't. Most of the Monk features are exactly the same. They've changed the name of key points, which was probably the least needed change to the key system overall. And they've increased the damage die on the martial arts by 1 per level. So that means on average, Monks are doing 1 more damage per hit. This is probably the smallest change they could have made. They've also made Step of the Wind include both dash and disengage in the same feature, which is honestly nice, except that those features are probably the least used martial arts features, because the Monk needs to be close to do its damage, and now, if they want to be doing damage on par with other classes, they need their Flurry of Blows, which means they're not using Step of the Wind. What this speaks to is a class that is supposed to run in, hit twice with their attack action, run out with their bonus action, and do like a little bit of damage. And again, if your opponent is not targeting someone else, which they probably will be, if your opponent's not targeting someone else, they're going to come after you wherever you run. Your unarmed movement is good, but it's not 60 feet good, so running in and running out is probably going to be 20 feet each way. So you're still getting attacked by the enemy, unless they're attacking someone else, in which case, what are you contributing to the party other than some d6s? This is outlandish, that they would take what is well known to be the worst class in the game and make so few changes when they've given so much to other classes like the Wizard, like the Sorcerer, like the Fighter and Barbarian even. I don't understand the thought process here from Wizards of the Coast, but here are some things I think they need to change for the next version of the Monk. Firstly, they've got this feature, Heightened Metabolism, that allows you to take a short rest in 1 minute. I guess the idea here is, in situations where you don't have an hour to spare for a short rest, once per day, the monk can still ask for a minute to recover their ki points, so that they are not starved for some of those ki. What frustrates me about this is that this feature is so inflexible. Firstly, it's not like an action to do. You don't snap your fingers and recover your ki. You still do need a minute. So most groups that are like either doing one fight per day or are slamming back-to-back fights are still not going to benefit too much from this feature. The other thing is, it's once per day. So if your group does do a long series of combats, the monk is still not keeping up the way that they sort of expected to. It's like a feature that is targeted at a very specific number of rests and fights per day, with a very specific amount of time allowed in between each in order to be optimal. And it's just not going to happen in most cases. If this is their solution to the key point system, then we all need to change our games to fit the monk, instead of what should obviously happen, which is the monk being changed to fit our games. Here's what I propose instead. Scratch heightened metabolism and introduce the meditate action for monks. This is going to cost an action and probably in combat be used most often. You're going to roll your martial arts die and recover that many ki. Yes, you are sacrificing your action economy in order to regenerate your ki, which helps your action economy. So now this is a system where monks in a protracted battle are maybe using that bonus action Step of the Wind to retreat from combat, take the meditate action, and start restoring some of those ki points so that they can jump in and continue the fight. On average, monks at early levels will need to do this every 2 to 3 turns, but at higher levels where they have more ki points in the first place and where their martial arts die is higher, might only need to do this once every 8 to 10 turns, which is probably longer than any combat is going to be. It also means, as soon as a combat is over, if you plonk your butt down and meditate for like a minute, you're guaranteed to get all your ki back, every time. So this is my solution for the ki starvation of monks. I also then think we are now free to throw in some ki-powered damage features that aren't tied to the subclass. Yes, subclasses are going to have their features and they're going to require a certain amount of ki points, and that is good and fine because now the monk has a way of continuously refreshing that and being rejuvenated from the act of combat. I think that we should put in something like choose a number of ki points up to, the highest number of your martial arts die or something to that effect. Then your next unarmed strike deals additional damage equal to that many rolls of your martial arts die. This would mean that monks get to supercharge and expend a ton of these discipline points in for one enormous punch to give them this incredible feeling at the table of being a powerful damage dealer when they need to be and having this great sustained damage when they don't. Add this together with some improvements to subclasses that are going to allow more dynamic ki expenditure, and I think you might have a monk that people would play.